Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Media Matters for Anfield Index. 13. Some people call it an unlucky number, don't they? But is it magic? Who really cares what you think of it? It is the gap in the Premier League. Is it one hand on the title? Is it all paws? We can all see it differently. Here to talk through that, the game against Newcastle last night, a few rumours and things kicking around, and everything PSG coming up, is the renowned and the respected David Lynch. I mean, David, it still sounds strange, but you heard it last night like me. It rings round the ground. The now you're going to believe us tune. 13 points clear. Obviously, we get that news about Arsenal. This is more than one hand on the trophy now, isn't it?
Yeah, the title is kind of won already, and I know nobody who's remotely close to it will say that. Obviously, it's absolutely right that players and staff have to keep their feet on the ground because a few games they've got to win yet, and some tests to come, so they've got to take it very, very seriously. But I think I said this on kind of YouTube yesterday. As a journalist who covers the club, I've just got to kind of call it as I see it, and as I see it, I can't imagine a world when you consider all the underlying numbers, the position in the table, Arsenal's problems, Liverpool's strength. There's just not a world where this doesn't end in Liverpool lifting the Premier League trophy. And I think, I'm saying that as a journalist as well, but I also think fans as well should be absolutely able to say it's done and celebrate it and really enjoy these last few games, because if you can't crow from this position of strength, then when are you ever going to be able to do that? So, I think Paul Ghosty from the Liverpool Echo told me a really funny story yesterday as well. Actually, he said one of his mates had said to him, no, we shouldn't get carried away yet. And he was like, what, who are you, Ronnie Moran? You don't need to try and keep our feet on the ground. We're fans. We can kind of say what we want. So I wouldn't worry about that too much or being grounded. I think everyone should enjoy every minute of this, because these positions, I mean, when does this ever happen? I mean, I suppose we did see it in the season where Liverpool last won it, but to have this sort of lead is extremely unusual. So everyone should be relishing it and enjoying it. And as I say, there's not a doubt in my mind this ends with Liverpool winning the league.
I was going to ask you, especially, and I'm now really, God knows what the supercomputer will put it as, but 89 million% certain, so to speak, or as you can be. When we look at that league table at the moment, is it almost a case for you in almost wider context as well? There's no title race really at the moment. It's like the race for who wants to be in the Champions League or doesn't want to be almost.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, the statistic was doing the rounds, wasn't it? Yesterday, that Arsenal are closer to 10th than they are to Liverpool at the top. And so that tells you kind of where things are at in terms of this being a title race of any description. And the thing is, you watch Arsenal as well, and you can't really see where the next win's coming from. I mean, lucky for them, they've got Manchester United next, so maybe that's a guaranteed 3 points. But they just aren't scoring enough goals, are they? And they've got all their attackers missing. So they've been unfortunate in that regard, but that's why it's decided it's not just Liverpool being great, but they are very poor at the moment as well. So that's put everything in Liverpool's favour. And that's obviously fantastic for Liverpool fans. I've heard a few shouts that this isn't a great season or whatever. I know that is primarily based on bitterness, no doubt about it, because I think that chase for Europe is going to be absolutely fascinating over the remainder of the season. Really interested to see who gets there. I personally would just love to see Bournemouth do it, to be honest. I'd love the way they run, the type of football they play. But that's a tangent I'm going off on. But like you say, there is no title race anymore. It's all about where else everybody else finishes, really.
And that line, as Jan Temple's put there, still seems to be doing the round from a son. We haven't played anyone good yet, 28 games in. So maybe it could even be tough in the last 10. Who knows particularly. But the Newcastle game last night, I mean, I do want to talk about this because there was so much to like. And we could hear afterwards when Arne Slot was talking, he really liked a lot of this as well.
In a way, we all know, you especially, how of an emotional game that was for both teams, but definitely for us as well. So to show up the way we did tonight, hardly conceding a chance against a very good team like Newcastle, is a big compliment for the players, how they handled these 5 games in 15 days.
I mean, 5 games in 15 days, more points than Arsenal in the last 5 as well. But this game, especially, David, I got to be honest, I just felt like watching it when I was saying to my mate in the stadium, these are a Champions League chasing team. Yes, there's no Isaac, and people will factor that in, but we were just dominating them, weren't we?
Yeah, I thought coming into this one it was going to be a really tough game in terms of, because Newcastle have got loads of quality, haven't they? And they are a bit up and down. You don't know which version of them you're going to see, but I think they're very well set up to kind of hurt the big teams, by sitting in deep and hitting you on the break. And, you looked at Liverpool, the workload they got through in the games preceding it, the fact all those games have been very, very tough ones on paper, bar Wolves, which ended up being difficult in the end anyway. And I just thought, you know what? All we need to see from Liverpool today is the result. Doesn't really necessarily matter about the performance. And yet, what we actually did get was a hugely dominant performance, as you say, from minute 1 to minute 90. Really, Liverpool in complete control. Go 1-0 up, completely manage the game from there. Really, really comfortable. Don't give up many shots at all. Don't give up many good chances. And themselves, they're just probing, patient, looking for the next opportunity. And you just knew that Liverpool's second was going to come. You knew that was coming. You didn't think that Newcastle were going to get the second goal in the game at any point, really. So to be that controlling and that dominant, as you say, against a very good side, albeit without Isak, who will make a difference for them in the Carabao Cup final. But it was a hugely impressive performance and kind of quite similar to some that we've seen this season, really. Arne Slot's getting a bit of a punch-on, isn't he, for getting 2-0 victories? And I think they're the perfect... It's almost a perfect scoreline, 2-0, really, because it's just that beautiful level of enough dominance and a clean sheet. It shows that you're really in control of the game. So, yeah, I think the scoreline summed up the performance that we saw, which was very, very good.
Does seem to be it's sort of MO, doesn't it? The way we just kill teams, almost crush that spirit or hope and just almost play out the last part of the game. It has been brilliant to see. And when we've talked about players, and it's right, we're not disregarding them, the likes of Van Dijk, Salah, brilliant as they always were last night. It just felt like, though, there was a few faces that it's worth calling out. And Dominic Szoboszlai, we talked about him before the game. We almost said, because of how tired he was after City, maybe it's good if he's nowhere near this or starts on the bench, etc. Dear Christ, he was unbelievable from the start last night, wasn't he?
Yeah, it doesn't just start. He plays 90 minutes. I mean, I thought the reason that Curtis Jones had dropped to the bench was maybe to come in and give Szoboszlai a rest, maybe around the hour mark or whatever. And then he ends the game on the pitch, still doing all that running, still getting everywhere. His engine is absolutely remarkable. I mean, the biggest compliment you can pay him is it's Jordan Henderson-like in terms of his ability and willingness to cover all that ground consistently. He's absolutely remarkable in that regard. So, yeah, a huge credit to him, because, I mean, what he must be doing in his recovery work must be top-notch as well. That's the stuff that goes on behind the scenes that allows you to do this without picking up injuries. So the sports scientists at the club must have a lot of faith in his ability to look after himself and to be able to trust him to keep putting in these performances. So, top class from him, and also good judgment for the manager, because I think me and you would have dropped him out of the team, to be honest. So that was a really good call, and I thought his performance overall was fantastic as well.
It's almost a way of phrasing this, but from what we've seen in the last, I'd say weeks, maybe even months recently, does it feel like Szoboszlai, and maybe it is the goal assist element people have talked about, but almost he just looks bigger and like he's gone up a level in the last few months or so. You can almost visibly see it on the pitch.
Yeah, I think we're seeing the effects of confidence in his game. I think at the start of the season, when for me he was getting a bit of undue stick, really. I thought it was unfair. A lot of the criticism he got at the start of the season, I still think he was playing well then. But I do think he's kicked on now, and I think getting a couple of goals, I think working with this manager, getting a bit more used to exactly what's being demanded of him, timing his runs into the box better, things like that. Excuse me. It all seems to be coming together now, and he's offering that consistent goal threat and a threat in terms of assists as well that we've been wanting to see from him, and that we've known for a long time he's capable of as well. So he really just seems to be in a good place at the moment. And I mean, if you combine him, like I say, a Jordan Henderson work rate with output that, we hope is going to keep going on that upward curve and almost be kind of a Steven Gerrard character in terms of arriving and scoring goals, then, I mean, what have you got there? There's real potential for him to be one of the top midfielders in the world. And I mean, I've written pieces on him and spoken to people behind the scenes who've known him for a long time. about what he's like as a character. And he, I remember speaking to Jesse Marsh actually, and he said, him and Erling Haaland, when he had them together, were kind of the two who they just knew they were going to go to that top level, and they were determined to squeeze everything they had out of the world-class talent they possessed. So if you've got that mindset and you're seeing these improvements already, he's going right to the top for me, and he's already playing at an absolutely incredible level.
Yeah, it really does look something special. 13 goal contributions this season as well. So a big impact that he's having there. And another player that, if we're honest, some people have criticised the lack of output being the biggest thing. But just last night, it almost felt like, I know there's no goal and assist, but peak Luis Diaz, Newcastle just couldn't cope with him at times.
Well, I just don't think it's a coincidence that he's had a real dip in terms of output, albeit I think he's had some decent performances in there, but his dip in output has coincided with him being moved to that centre-forward position. Yeah. And then the very first game he gets moved out to the left, he scores a goal. It's just not a coincidence that has happened. That was obviously against Wolverhampton Wanderers. He is a left winger, isn't he? At the end of the day, yeah. It's been a needs-must situation with him playing through the centre, but I think there's every chance now that Jota is back that he can play down that left-hand side. And I think some of his statistics from yesterday, wasn't it? It was most dribbles completed in the match, most chances created. So we know how good he is when he's more comfortable out on that left-hand side. And I just think it's going to be really interesting competition now with Gakpo, who's missed a couple through injuries. He's back now, but when Diaz is performing like that, it's hard to drag him out of the team. You've got Jota for that centre-forward role. So really, really interesting and positive headache, I guess, for the managers to have.
Yeah, there was a few mentioning it in the stadium. I heard it like after he got the assist, or just the way he was playing when he came off as well. People were talking about like he's the starting shirt. Is it just a case now of Slot's got two brilliant options, and whichever one's in top form at the time will just get the nod? It's just too close to call week by week almost.
I think the thing that works for Diaz here that probably helps him though is that, we'll learn a lot, I guess, actually, with the PSG away game that's coming up.
True.
How does Slot see that? Does he think that Jota is the guy he wants to lean on, who is his starting centre forward, and that's that? And the reason Diaz has been in that role is just because Jota's not been fit and available and ready to do a couple of games in a week. We're about to kind of find out whether that's the case, really. So I'll be really interested to see there. But it is, even if it is kind of Jota who's the starter there, you've got two great options down that left-hand side who both will pick up minutes, because there's still an awful lot of games to squeeze in. I think if Liverpool get to the Champions League final, is it still 18 games left, I think, this season? So there's a lot of games there where you're going to need everyone. And there's probably some more injuries to come as well, because that will happen no matter how good Liverpool's record is in that regard. So, it's two good options. And as I say, a good headache for the managers to think about.
Yeah, fingers crossed they both stay fit and they can be used that way. And I suppose to finish this one off, we talked about how it is almost a standard Arne Slot performance, the 2-0 scoreline, the domination. There's almost a danger, I suppose, you can be a bit blasé, but with the context, where we are in the league, the pressure that was on, the talk that had been beforehand, where does this performance rank in terms of overall this season? Is it a real noteworthy one at the top, or is the competition just that good from what we've seen?
There's just been so many of these that are quite similar that I think it's kind of tough to separate them, really. And a few of them are 2-0s as well. I mean, I think Real Madrid, Manchester City at Anfield in particular, because it was a very different approach away from home against them. They're up there, aren't they? And this was a similar performance. Gave absolutely nothing away, never looked under threat, complete control, get the goals at the right times, and always look like a threat yourself. So I thought, it kind of goes into that kind of bunch of performances, really. And the fact that Liverpool are producing that consistently is phenomenal, by the way. I still, for me, my favourite was still Tottenham in the Carabao Cup semi, because there was that jeopardy of being 1-0 down. They played not that well in the first leg. As I say, they come into it 1-0 down and just absolutely blew them away. And that was a real dominant performance. But, the fact that they're putting in these types of games so consistently, and that this is becoming a bit of a hallmark, these 2-0 wins, that says a lot about how good this team is, I think.
Yeah, absolutely special. And thank you for your comments. Keep those coming in. Make sure you smash that like button. Saigo Pal saying there, how likely is it we see this tactic and formation that we used against City the same as PSG? We will have a little bit of a talk about that later, I promise. And Red Armchair Supporters, he says there, people moaned about Slot not being a big name and said he's only a yes man. I think everyone knows what everyone in red thinks of Arne Slot now. No two ways about it. And speaking of Arne Slot, I've got quite strong thoughts on this, so I'm intrigued by yours. The ban, yeah, it kind of came all of a sudden on the day of the game before Newcastle, and those of us who are more cynical have probably got strong opinions on this. What did you make of this? Was this almost there's something a bit strange, or was it a case of expected this, probably what you thought it would be?
I tell you what surprised me about the whole process actually is that Liverpool took every little bit of time they needed or that was available to them to respond to the charges when they could have, particularly as they were going to accept it. Why not just do it immediately and try and get the ball rolling? I wonder whether we were just trying to get the other side of the Villa and City games to have him on the touchline there so that they could control the environment they were working in around Newcastle and then Southampton, obviously with it being a home game. They know where they can take Slot down from the stands into the dressing room. They can control the comms around it and everything like that. It's not a case of turn up and see how we can set it up. So maybe that was the strategy there. But obviously the worry was the longer it went on, there was the risk there of missing the Carabao Cup final, which would have been an absolute disaster. So I was a little bit worried about it, to be honest, that they dragged it on so long. I actually think in the end, I know the timing, I saw your unhappiness about it, but I thought Liverpool were quite fortunate really in that the FA did them a bit of a solid really in announcing it before the Newcastle game, because I mean if he had been banned for the cup final, what a shame that would have been really, and particularly his first cup final as Liverpool manager. So I was quite grateful in the end really they managed to sneak it in before the Newcastle game. He missed that one. He missed Southampton at home, which isn't too bad at all. You'd like to think Johnny Heitinga can see him over the line in that one. And then he'll be back for the cup final, so that's really good news. So I'm not too fussed about the timing, to be honest. I think that's worked out quite well for Liverpool.
Yeah, maybe the only solace that I took from that was Everton are fined a little bit more, because if Curtis Jones had got any fine, we would have set up the GoFundMe page ourselves. So maybe there's a little bit of solace, as you say. He is back for the Carabao Cup in that regard. And we turn, as we always do, to the North.